In this session, we're going to take a look at creating our own recorded artistic or sketch effects that we save or record as macros in CorelDRAW. This gives us the ability to create the effect without going through all the steps of the effect and then save that as a macro or a script in CorelDRAW that we can easily access. And actually, I've found that using this process in my own design work, that being able to get to effects very quickly and easily really kind of allows me to be a little bit more creative, because I can see these effects more quickly without having to go through all the steps of creating the effect every time I want to take a look at that effect, or I'm thinking about incorporating that effect into a design. To get started here, we'll go ahead and take a look at our macro manager. We'll go to Tools, we'll come down to Macros, and we'll go to the Macro Manager. That'll open it up. And now here I have a macro project called My Effects. I'll go ahead and expand this, and I can come down here to Recorded Macro, and here you can see Sketch 1. I'll go ahead and select my image, double click on that, and that'll apply all the steps that I had saved in the Recorded Macro to create the Sketch 1 effect. Once that's applied, I've actually stopped at a point where I can still do some editing and tweaking relating to the effect. For example, I can go to my transparency tool and click on this, and I can change the size of how that's being applied to the design. I can also come over to my textures for that transparency, and I want to click off here, and I'll go into the transparency tool itself and say look at a different texture for the effect that I'm working on. Maybe I want to go with something more like what's here, and then I could expand that out and change how that's being applied to the design for the sketch effect. Rotate that, etc. Also, what I can do is, once I've made an adjustment like that, I can go to Effects, Adjust, and Tone Curve, and I could say lighten up the lighter areas and make another further adjustment on that artistic effect, and then maybe come down here and darken the dark areas. And there's tutorials on the tone curve on the advancedtshirts.com website, and I'll go ahead and select OK here. And then I just take this and convert that to an actual bitmap. Now here on advancedtshirts.com, we've got a number of tutorials under the CorelDRAW tutorial section with different effects, and there's a lot of training here relating to how to create these effects, and then you can actually record these and have your own effects library. So to get started here, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and just delete these images here, and we'll go back to the original image. What I want to do is come over to my macro manager, and I'll go New, and I'll create New Macro Project. I'll just call this Effects. You could call it whatever you want to call it. And go ahead and select Save. Now I have my Effects Macro Project. I can select that. Now I'm going to want to have my image selected. I've got this set here, and I come down here to the Record button at the bottom of the Macro Manager. Make sure I've got Effects selected as the Save In macro, and I'll just type in Sketch 1 and select OK. Now make sure you have your image selected when you do this, because you'll need an image selected when you want to run your effect through the macros. Go ahead and I'll go to Bitmap Mode, and I'm going to change this to a grayscale. Now it's currently a grayscale. If it was an RGB, I would change it to a grayscale for a sketch effect, but I won't need to do that. So I'll simply go Copy, Paste, I'll go to Effects, Transform, Invert. Then I'll come over here to my Transparency, I'm going to go to Uniform, I'm going to go to Color Dodge, I'm going to set that at 100%. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go Bitmaps, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and you can see that at 9 pixels and the effect that I get. Now, one thing you need to do when you're recording macros, if you have preview turned on, the macro recorder won't record them, so you have to turn that off. If this is on and then you try to run your script and it doesn't work, it's because the preview is on. You have to turn that off and select OK. And you could adjust this more and tweak this more. You could go down to less, something like that, or more, etc., depending on how you want your effect to look. And I'll go probably somewhere right about 8 or so. Turn off preview, select OK. Now, that having been applied, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy this again, paste that in again. Now that's a real strong effect there, but I'm going to change this. I'm going to go to my transparency, and I'm going to change my transparency to subtract, Now I'm going to go bitmaps, not bitmaps, I'm going to go effects, transform, and invert again. And then I'm going to go from my transparency and I'm going to go to texture. And then I can left click and drag this, and we can see that we can change that effect and do more tweaking here. And I could go to my tone curve, etc. if I wanted to. Now once this is done, I'll get my pick tool, I'll come down here and I'll click on stop. Now I'll have stopped recording. Now I have created a recording of a script that's in my effects. So I can come here to recorded macros, select my object, double click on sketch 1, and that'll apply my effect, and then I can come in here and then I can start to do some adjustments. I can go to my transparency and I could change what I'm using for the transparency. You can see that effect looks very nice there. And if I want to, I could go to my tone curve tool, effects, adjust, tone curve, and I could lighten up some of the lighter areas and darken up some of the darker areas and really dial in how I want that sketch effect to look. And then I would just simply go ahead and select everything and go bitmaps, convert to bitmap, and process that, and I'd have my image set up with my sketch effect. And I also have the beginning of a library of effects that I've recorded in CorelDRAW that I could use throughout my design process without having to go through all of the steps that I would have to go through to create that effect. I'd have that recorded as a macro. So just a quick video on how to create and save your own macros to record your artistic and sketch effects, and then be able to rerun them in CorelDRAW. We'll go ahead and wrap here, and we'll see you in our next video.